Hello, and welcome to Seafood Matters Podcast, the voice of the UK seafood industry. I'm your host, Jim Cowie. In this episode, I am talking with Jón Kristjánsson, a fishery scientist from Iceland. I sometimes say the key to sustainability is seasonality. And I know from some Icelandic fishermen I've spoken to over the years, one of them was telling me he felt the biggest help to the fish stocks in Iceland was changing the quota year from calendar year to I think it starts in September. And I often wonder if that same principle would not be better in the UK, because our spawning cycles are different. April, May, there's an old fishwife saying in this country, in our area, never eat a fish until it's had a drink of the May water. And it has just spawned and it is thin and out of condition and hasn't started feeding again. So would it make sense for us to follow the Iceland example and change the quota year?
No, I mean, this is a bookkeeping system and it has nothing to do with fisheries. It's a bookkeeping thing. I mean, we used to fish 150,000 tons in the winter spawning time on the spawning grounds for centuries. For years. Always. Then they decide to imply the quota system, which is about bringing the most value ashore, not the quantity of fish, the most value from the sea. That will see fish of first quality giving the highest price in the export or so. And what they do here, instead, we had hundreds of boats in the spawning season with nets in Iceland, and there was 150 boats in Westmanland that caught over 1,000 tons each year. Now there are 6 boats in the area from Hornafjörður in the east to Reykjavik. They have completely vanished because they don't have quotas. These small boats, all the quotas are in the hands of the big companies. And in the spawning time, as I told you, Lofoten fishery is at the highest, and they fish in Lofoten no matter what. They are not protecting the spawning stock within the limits. I mean, it's sensible. But in Iceland, they don't catch this price because in the Lofoten season, the price of the cod falls down because they can't stop fishing because they have to sell the fish, and then market is overfilled with cod in the spawning season, and then they don't fish. They keep the quota until the summer when the price is higher. And this is because of the value conducted effect of the quota system, isn't it?
Yeah.
And now we are fishing grásleppa, what is called the lumpfish. It's lumpfish season, which is very good. But in a certain period in the lump fishery, there is a 1 ton of cod against every ton of lumpfish, because the cod are coming shallow to the shore, either to spawn or to recover after spawning. They throw them away because they are not allowed to catch them. They have no quota, and they can't land them, and they get fined. And the only way is to release it, if you call it so. They can't utilize it. They can't sell it. They can't do nothing. But now the fishing control has taken into use drones, which they fly over this boats, lumpfish boats, and now 9 boats were fined because they threw away discarded cod. They don't look at the big trawlers, no. They look at the small guys. You can't use this fishery unless that you catch some cod and you are not allowed to take it ashore, not even to give it away. This is ridiculous. This is how it is. Sharpen the control, say they. Solving the fishery problem by sharpening the control instead of free fishing for the spawning cod, because it's no use it having it, because they die 80% after the spawning. Coast cod die after the spawning, and a long time Icelandic tagging investigation shows that they spawn on the average 1.2 times. And he said, the biologist said, this is showing how big the effort is, fishery effort is too big. But the recovery in number of tags, percentage, was very low. So it's natural mortality, which is very high in this fish, because their goal is to put as many eggs into the next generation as they can and finish. Then they use their whole body to develop these eggs. There was one caught here the other day, 6 kilos of a roe. And then they die. They turn the body into eggs and die, mostly. So my advice in fisheries is release the rope in the front and release the rope in the back and go to sea, everybody.
Yeah.
But I've been criticizing this for all the time in my whole working life, and they've given up to answer me. But everything I have said or predicted has become true.
Well, they can't hide that.
No, I said to them in the beginning, we should the stock had diminished and the cuts went down because the weight by age has decreased. Therefore, the stock was much less, and they would put a quota system on us. I said to them, you can never keep a starving fish. The worst thing you can do is to protect it. Right? That's true. We are catching now 220,000 tons of cod instead of 500,000 when the fishing was free.
Yeah.
It's a fact. You can't deny it. You can't blame it on overfishing as they do, even not on old overfishing. We have the old overfishing. In the 50s, you caught too much. That's old overfishing. And they are allowed to do this. Politicians say, really listen to the scientists.
I wonder if scientists are saying what the politicians want to hear.
No, I don't think so. The politicians use the scientists instead of taking decisions themselves. We are just now these days sending a letter about this to every parliament member. Just now these days, reminding them of the breaking of laws and so on, by decommissioning boats and taking the fishermen out of their work, because it's not allowed. It's illegal to do it. It was only to be a short time. It's been 40 years now, but I don't know what is. Politicians are corrupted. But also the science is protecting themselves. And you remember the strategy unit by Blair. Blair's strategy unit was to change the fishery policy. And I had a speech in Westminster with the Lowestoft guys, where I was showing the effect of the Faro system, which was then very good before the scientists came in, and there were fishing days, no matter what you caught, fishing days only. Therefore, the catch reflected the size of the stock. But then the biologists called it overfishing, and fishing days is only a quarter of what it was before when I was there. And there was a lot of guys, and then there came people from the strategy unit to interview me here in Iceland. And I understood that they had been programmed by Lowestoft. They knew all about me. They said, it is wrong what you say and so on. They knew all. They had been briefed from Lowestoft to make me just a fraud guy. You can read about the answers from Lowestoft on my web page, where they say that recruitment is random. We can put recruitment as a random, and we will get the same result as you got. When I was telling them that it was the opposite phase of recruitment and spawning stock, they have denied everything. And in the Faroes, they said you can make it to look like that. No. It's a story we are still fighting, and they are still stubborn. And now they have closed the prawn fishery. We were catching prawns in 2010, 2,500 tons in 2010. Then they started to make the trawls more selective and make things that the cod was not caught as bycatch, as they are doing in your country. Then it started to decline, and last year they only caught 200 tons. And in the beginning of the fishery, there were 170 boats. Now you have 9 boats. And now they have closed it down for unforeseeable time. And I learned in Ireland, in Kilkeel, that they said you have to fish the shrimp ground all the time, all the year around, all in the all future. Because if you protect them, you will look in 3-4 years, there is nothing, only a few big ones, because they eat themselves. So they have now, the only method is to close down the fishery.
Yeah.
So
it's easy. It's too easy.
Well, how do you know that the prawn guy in the institute here said to me, how do you know that you should go on catching and you can catch, the effort is too small. How do you know that? Have you read about a paper on that? No. I have been talking to fishermen in the British Isles, which have this as a livelihood. They know everything about it. Why don't we talk to them yourself? No.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
That is a real sad fact. They will not speak to fishermen.
No. I know.
And so they are not speaking to the people who are in that areas more than anybody else. And another thing, I know they talk about sustainability. Well, I've got very good friends here, Jón, who have invested millions of pounds in new vessels. They've got sons and grandchildren coming through. Why on earth will they not want to fish sustainably?
I was with Seiner there, and as I told you, and I asked the guy, are you going to renew the boat? He said, no, I only have daughters.
Yeah.
And they are letting them lose their livelihood, their work, and their houses, because they get worthless in our spots of Iceland. They're worthless. People can't sell their houses. They can't go away. and very formal quote, this was a machine. This was the livelihood of this small. It's all now in the hand of big companies, and even I know two examples of that. One big company, the one which is involved in Namibia, no?
Yeah.
Yeah, and they bought up the shrimp industry in two places, and they tore down the fabric, so nobody could use it. You couldn't even buy shrimp from others for peeling because they destroyed the fabrics or factories just to devalue things, so get rid of concurrence. They are criminal.
And who's that?
What?
Who was doing that?
Who is the
Who was doing that?
Samherji? In the guys are breeding in Namibia now and fraud. Have companies all over the world, and they brought British troll companies with loans from a bank they owned. You know, Onward Shipping in Aberdeen. The owner of it, Jón.
Terry.
What?
Terry.
Yeah, no, he called me in Glasgow once. I was in Glasgow. We had a meeting, and he told me about how they stole the company from him, Samherji, by promising we will have it all British and so on and so on. So they disappeared. They stole the company, as I say, with money from the Icelandic banks. They never paid back even.
Gee.
And now I'm saying too much. It's dangerous.
Well, it's fact. You know, John, going forward with us, the thing that fascinates me about the amount of research you've done, we have a situation here which is really damaging. We have a organization called the Marine Conservation Society, MCS, Marine Conservation, and they have a good fish guide, they call it, and it's traffic lights, and it's the red species you do not eat, amber eat in moderation, and green is okay. And you're listening to you, it just exactly underlines exactly what I've said for many years. Fish conservation is so much more. It is far too big a subject and far too complex to be taken down to three colours.
I mean, these companies are made for collecting money, and everybody are buying the service because otherwise they can't sell their fish. This is a money machine only. And they even put lumpfish on the list from Iceland, and because it was killing so many seals. But the data on killed seals was completely fraud. And we have been fishing lumpfish for all our fishing history, and it has been free fishing for lumpfish all the time, except now they're putting quota on it. But how? Lumpfish, they only catch the females. They are bigger than the males. They are only caught because that's their value. They get males as bycatch, which I eat. But they are only targeting the spawning stock on all places in Iceland where they are. But there is no problem with recruitment. And they are feeding as pelagic fish all over the Atlantic. They are caught in every hole when they are estimating the mackerel stocks or herring stocks. Bycatch is always lumpfish. They are pelagic. So this is, and remember, There was free fishery in Iceland all the time until the Cold Wars, when we improved this, increased the fishery limits. And when we increased it from 4 to 12 miles, the trawlers lost 70% of their grounds. It was free fishing before that for all nations, for all trawlers, unlimited pond. And nobody ever overfished anything. They tried by all means. The fish was only regulated by profit cost. If it was too costly, then a retreat came back. It was like in the fish. It's the same thing. It was self-regulated by cuts and effort and costs. And nobody ever destroyed anything.
Yeah, yeah. You're funny you should say that about the Cold War. I remember when, as a child, when I was younger, and my father was a fisherman, as I said, when the Cold War, during the Cold War, he used to always say, we shouldn't be putting our gunboats and navy up to Iceland. We should be copying what the Icelanders are doing and
Yes,
in our
yes,
grounds.
yes. But what I learned from that time is now when I listen to news or fake news from a radio station, TV station, we knew in Iceland what was happening, but the BBC was lying all the time. They said Icelandic gunboats are attacking the British Marine. What was the British? It was a frigate or a destroyer or something, but
Yeah, yeah,
our gunboat was a 30-ton wooden boat.
yeah.
Yeah. And they were saying Icelanders were attacking us with their gunboats.
Yeah,
There was only lie. And we saw how they make news for them.
yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
today it's the same thing.
Our fishermen were on all. You could say our fishermen were not in favour of the gunboat of our navy going to Iceland.
No.
Not at
And
all.
I once came to Blackpool, and there was nothing in the harbour except small free-time boats or something. But my father, he was on a trawlers exporting fish to England all the war. He was on sea as a fisherman through all the war. And I remember how he fell into a dock in Blackpool, I think, when it was a blackout and didn't see anything. And he was shot at many times, and they rescued a lot of people in the war. And he wrote his memories a few years before he passed away, which I have published.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. John, what's your views on longline gill netting sustainably and responsibly? We have a real problem just now in our west coast, mostly west coast of Shetland, where there is long, they're foreign not Icelandic, Spanish and French boats. It goes back to when we were part of the EU, and although we are out of it now in some ways, we are still tied to the common fisheries policy and others. And our fishing boats are picking up. There was one small boat, was 10 miles outside Ullapool yesterday, and picked up ghost netting. Well, it's all, and this is the other annoying thing, is they are finding that all this old disused netting throughout the seas, and the MCS are telling people don't eat lobster and crab because their ropes are affecting whales. and yet there is hundreds of square miles of the Atlantic that is covered in old gill nets and long lines that are being left drifting, and they are not even mentioning that.
No, this is a political issue, I think. I mean, they don't listen to fishermen. I thought that all the EU fleet would be thrown out of British fishery areas when you left, but they have given up. They promised that, but didn't hold the promise. But sustainable fishery? I mean, all fishery this is one of the worst conversation. Sustainability. It's an idiotic word,
Yeah.
in my view.
I often say to people it's the most abused word in the English language.
Yeah. I hate them. They're sustainable. I mean, fishery, you can't destroy a fish stock. Even if you try by all means, as I mentioned, they will learn. When it is empty, there are 50% left. I remember there was an investigation of Arctic char in the Canada for 25 years. It was called Keyhole Lake because it was so small. So they decided that this was a good thing to study. So they went, as I said in the report, we went to Keyhole Lake and fished out all the fish every 5 years for 25 years. Every fifth year they fished out the lake for 25 years. The situation was the same as they left 5 years ago. And there were fish of the age that shouldn't have been there. Why is that? Because they only caught, when you stop fishing, you are only half of the population. Well, we have been trying to fish out. It's impossible. It's impossible. But it increases the quality of the fish, of course, with immediate effect. Parasites disappeared, fish got fat, good condition, faster growth, and very good quality food.
And do you feel that when you were talking about the whiting earlier, we mesh size because about from conserving stocks, because we often think the fear of using only mesh size, a mature whiting will escape, and as a predator stock, it could be eating the smaller cod and haddock. Is that a theory?
No, I mean, overpopulation is much more serious problem. Eating the young ones is a natural method of regulating the stock.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. There is a lake. There is a lake in Africa between Zimbabwe and Zaire, I think. It's a huge reservoir. And as it was a river before, there was no pelagic fish in it. So they went to Lake Tanganyika, I think, and got some herring there and moved it by an airplane in plastic bags and released it into the water in the lake. And 10 years later, they were catching, I think, 10,000 tons or something. But the fish had got smaller. And then the government said, we have to stop the fishery because we are clearing out the stock. We are fishing so much and they are so small, so there are only babies left. My colleague was there and he was working on it. He said, guys, keep on fishing. If it goes wrong, get the other 2 plastic bags from Tanganyika Lake. Get all the 2 bags of herring if it all goes wrong. And there was different rules on the south side and the north side, where there was free fishery on one side and only big mess allowed in the other side, and the fish catch where it was everything was uncontrolled. The catch was 5 times as much as in the protected area in the other side of the lake. There has been written books about this. Lake Victoria is another example. Before they put out this Nile carp, they were catching about maybe 300,000 tons. Now they're catching 1.5 million tons in that lake. 1.5 million tons. And the report says from the Norwegian guy who has been studying this, he said there are no seeable effect on the fisheries on the stocks. We can't see any fishing effects on the stock, even if you remove 1.5 million tons. He is called Jeppe Kolding. He has written about it. He's in Bergen in the freshwater sector, but there's a complete divorce between the Marine Institute and the university. Even if it's only 1 kilometer away from each other, they don't talk to each other.
Who's that?
What?
What two bodies is that?
That's Marine Institute in Bergen and the University of Bergen, which is studying freshwater.
Okay, yeah.
And a friend of mine, he left the Marine Institute in Bergen. He is now working privately, and because he disagreed, he didn't adhere to the thesis in the Marine Institute, and it was called that he was difficult to deal with. So he just left. His thesis is now that the salmon, downgoing in salmon in both Scotland and all the Atlantic area is because of the mackerel. It now fills all the fjords. There's no food. Has eaten up everything. And the mackerel stock maybe now is going on. He says, you should tenfold the mackerel fisheries, not protecting it. They're protecting both, what do you call this other thing? Svartkaft in Faroes. Black...
Halibut.
Okay, yeah. But mackerel stock is increasing.
Yeah.
And he will allow more fishing. He said the stock is underestimated and so on and so forth. And they estimate the stocks of mackerel by counting the eggs in the North Atlantic. Right?
Yeah. I think the mackerel stocks in this country is the same. It's gone up.
Yeah.
That's probably from what you're saying about other things, the fishing has gone up as well. So it's.
But there are restrictions. There are restrictions on the fisheries, quotas and everything like that. But the growth of mackerel has diminished very much because of the size of the stock. It's growing much slower now than it did before, when the stock was less. It's natural.
Yeah. Yeah.
Blue whiting was it? It was blue whiting.
Yeah.
They are now coming. They are catching it now in great quantities at the Faroes. It's moving north now.
Yeah, I think they're catching it between Faroe and Scotland.
Yes, now.
Yeah.
But it comes to us and it goes up to Norway. And when I was in the herring research in '68, and the herring disappeared, the ocean was full with this thing from Iceland to half the way to Jan Mayen. loaded like carpet all the way. It pushed the herring away or ate the herring away. Blue whiting all over the fish, all over the area. Nobody was fishing it except the Russians because there was no gear. There's been a progress in the gear, in the pelagic gear with these huge trawls. They didn't exist before. They're very good things. Yes.
That is all fascinating stuff, John.
We have to talk together again, huh?
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely, definitely. I must try to get a hold of our mutual friend. I've actually talked to him, Peter Bruce, about coming on. So maybe we will ask you to come back when I get Peter.
Yeah. No, you see, I remember when I came to Peterhead first time. Then I talked to Peter, and I said, "You are catching too little, and you have to increase the fishery and so on." He just stared at me with open mouth, and then he called Tom Hay. I said, "Tom Hay, there's a biologic here. You have to meet him." I don't talk to them; they are all corrupt. But he came, and we became friends ever after.
Yeah. We are, many fishermen have quoted Tom Hay as saying, well, he told us and look what happened. He was right.
I have a long interview with him on my website.
I've listened to it. I know it. He was a great character.
Oh, fantastic.
Amazing memory, amazing mind.
Yes. And correct. Okay, we will talk again. We have to hammer on this. We can't give up. You know, the Marine Institute isn't answering us, we who criticize. No, there is a silence. And I am not allowed to go to the radio or TV. There are many years because I see what I tell you. This is not accepted.
Pardon?
All the media are corrupt or paid for by the quota mafia.
Yeah.
The quota mafia owns everything here. And even now, they were trying to buy one of our banks. And there's a scandal going on now because they were selling the guy who bought onward shipping. He was the manager of the bank then when the Big Four was here in Iceland, and he is now allowed to buy the bank again. Wow, the guys who stole the money from the banks are coming back with the stolen money and buying the banks again. It's a big scandal now. It's the government is shaking just these days.
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought in Iceland you called them quota barons.
Yeah, sægreifar. Sægreifar. And they own everything. They own all the stores and companies, transporting companies, farms, everything.
Yeah.
They have to put the stolen money somewhere.
In Scotland, we call them slipper skippers.
Yeah, I know.
They are all in their houses and charging a high leasing costs to the fishermen.
Yeah.
They have to sometimes they are not. We talk about conserving cod or catching it. Sometimes they're paying more for the quota than they will get for the cod on the market.
Yes. Yes, I did a study on the North Sea and wrote a report on it. And I think it just went down the drain in ISIS. But I said and argued that the North Sea was underfished. I made a long report on that, but nothing did happen. So it wasn't used. I think people are not allowed to to speak on these notes. Yes, but I don't know that. But the scientists there all say the same. And if you don't say the same thing on ICE said, you can't drink beer with them in Copenhagen.
Yeah.
I have been at an ISIS meeting once, and I started to talk with people. They were all filled with overfishing. It was useless to talk to them. Useless.
It is.
So
It is.
I don't do it.
It is very sad.
Huh?
It is almost like conservationists or people with that tag. It's as if everything is overfishing.
I mean, they say that over 1,000 biologists signed a paper that was to ban all bottom trawling. They don't know nothing about bottom trawling. They think it destroys the bottom. I mean, the Barents Sea has been trawled for over 100 years or more, with 1,000 to 2,000 to 3,000 trawlers. There were 3,000 in foreign vessels because before the fishery limits were set. 3,000 up to 1,600 tons.
Yeah. It is. It is almost like it is so corrupt. There is. You mentioned it there with the MCS. There's a MSC as well, Marine Stewardship Council, and it's almost like they've got an authority over everybody. And unfortunately, the public, they've got a great voice to the public. So it's even more damaging, Jón, because their voice is heard, whereas ours, as I say, ours in the industry is not.
I mean, MSC is worse than Greenpeace because they have a grip on the fishermen to buy their certificates. If you don't buy it, you can't sell your fish. I know in the Faroes they have to do it.
It's terrible. I think there's something so wrong with a system when I can't deal with you unless I pay somebody else.
Yes,
that's just corrupt. I mean, you could fish. You see fish on the market floor, and there'll be half the price on some species, only because, as the MSC say, they're not in the. Oh, I can't remember the name. Unfortunately, it's left me. The scheme. Not the scheme. I described it once. The scheme to me sounds like you walk into a door, in a door, and then all of a sudden, bang, behind you, the door's closed. It's completely dark. You don't know where you are or what you're doing. You have no control. That to me is a scheme.
And they get all their information from the scientists, governmental scientists. And they never ask anybody else. Before earlier, was before 60s or something, or even before 70s, the Marine Institute was doing trips to find new fishing areas and promote fishing. But then they turned around and now they're protecting everything.
Jón, I would be quite without of any fear of contradiction saying you are the first person I've met with scientist anywhere close to your name that has actually spoken to fishermen.
Mm-hmm.
And you will know that yourself.
Yes, and I have a very wide experience. You see that the guy who is dealing with blue whiting, he is sitting in his room. And the guy who is dealing with cabling, he has his own room. But I have been in 7 7 countries working on different species and talked to all kinds of people, from the black people in Malawi, if you can say black today, but they were fishing in canoes, and I showed them an echo sounder, and they were delighted. But their echo sounder, they found the fish, but their echo sounder was a stone in a string, rode in a canoe, and they found when it touched the fish underneath. That was their echo sounder. We were trying to help them. We should give them cheap echo sounders to use, but they knew how to do it. So I've seen a variety of things. I was teaching them to fish in traps. So they caught fish in traps, and that was okay, but it was difficult to do the experiment because they stole the ropes. They stole everything. They took the ropes because the ropes, strings were valuable. They used their strings were made of palm blades. So I mean, I have been in the field everywhere, all over. So that's the experience. It's the same thing I see everywhere. You can't fool nature. You have to work with it. You can't increase fish stock by stop fishing. It's ridiculous. It's impossible.
It's such a refreshing thing to hear you say that,
fine.
because it is normally doom, gloom, and despondency, and they churn it out just to more bad news, just so their people are filling their coffers.
I always remember what my professor said to us guys, that he was when we was finishing our university study. We were 5 in fish, and we learned by a very, very good man in Norway. He said, guys, never lose the sight of the scientific star which is lighting to you. With other words, don't let them buy you. Have your meaning and stand by it.
Wonderful.
I remember it every day.
Yeah. And what would you put as that light or star? What would you class as that?
Yeah, he said, lose aldrei the vision. I mean, you have to act as you think. And even if it is not so good, even if people are against you, you have to stand by your meanings. Yeah. I've done that.
Yeah,
it costs
absolutely.
a lot. I mean, it has costed my jobs and projects and everything. But I have survived.
And let me tell you, John, you have a great reputation among Scottish fishermen. Really,
thank you. Thank you very much.
I know many, many of them, and I've spoken to a number of them who have to tell them that I've been talking to you today, and every one of them spoke with a very high opinion of you.
Oh, that's very good to hear that, yes. They understand nature better than the scientists today. Yeah. I mean, our science. It all ended with the invasion of the computer.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned that was really interesting when you say about the scientists. They take it from it's all from the computer.
Yeah. I once said to a guy in this, a scientist, I said, it's obvious when the fish is starving, you have to fish more, and you can't protect the youngs because you add 1 year class to the stock. If you protect fish from 4 years old instead for 3 years old by increasing the mass size, you are adding 1 year class to the stock. and the food doesn't allow it. We should try to fish 100,000 ton at 100,000 ton of small fish and see what happens. That's a good idea, but let's do it in a computer first.
John, you don't need to do it in a computer. Let me tell you something. It's just taking it into my mind just now. I mentioned earlier about the Murray Firth in east of Scotland, where my father fished all his life, and lots of boats, hundreds. Now there's none. It's just, you've just taken one very interesting statistic to my mind. When I was a child and going out to sea with my father, he was fishing, their gear was 70 millimeters. It is now 120. They fished all the year round then, and there's no fish at all now. So
yes, in the Irish book, 100 years or more, 130 years now, it said that they did this research because they said there's so much small fish that you kill that this is incredible. You have to do something about it. And so they put a new fisheries rule with increased mess and so on and so forth. And after some years later, they reported we can't see any effect of the new fishery rules that should increase the output of the stock. We can't see any effect of that, but it's for sure. And if it hadn't been implied, then there will be no fish here today.
yeah.
So it didn't change anything. It didn't increase the stock at all.
And what was that measure?
By increasing the mass size.
Yeah. It's fascinating because as I said, it's just when there was that smaller, there was far more boats fishing then. And I know that the capacity and the horsepower and size of boats and size of nets has increased through time, but that statistic can't be changed. They were catching fish all year round at 70 millimeter in that area, and they're not catching any at all at 120.
No. One interesting thing. The scientists say we only find 0.02% cod in the cod's stomach, and that means if you calculate one fish a year, if a 5-year-old cod eats one 3-year-old cod per year, it means that the 5-year-old will reduce the stock of 3 fish about as many individuals as they are. You see? And what if they did it once a month or once a week? This is an infinitum. You can't even calculate it.
Yeah.
If they start to eat, it's incredible. Have you seen the video I put on my website where they cut up the big force toss? They have five fish in it, each cod, which is about half a kilo each. It's taken on a trolley. They open all the fish. It's full with big cod.
Yeah.
Now, it only happens now and then, they say.
You see, in the North Sea, one of the concerns the Shetland fishermen have just now is that scientists are taking their figures from the North Sea as a whole, from the Channel, English Channel, right up to Faroe. And they think maybe it should be Southern North Sea, Middle North Sea, and Northern North Sea. because it's so far apart on their stock assessment.
Yeah, that the stock assessment is a waste of money, complete waste of money. I am not. I do the survey on salmon rivers by routine. I see about is it nothing, much, or middles. That's the value of the estimate. It is not by point something. But what I use mostly to advise on the fish is the growth of the fish. So you don't have to sample all this. I think they're aging 15,000 cods per this survey. The only thing you have to look at, what's the condition of the fish? How is the growth? If the growth is slow, you have to catch more. If the growth is very good, you might consider to spare the fish or let it grow bigger, but very soon you got into trouble. You should fish as much as you can all the time. So surveys are a disguise of fraud. I mean, my teacher in Norway, he said to me, if you don't know what you are doing, just take more samples. It looks very good.
Wow.
He could go to a river or a lake and look, one fish, look at this, do this, do that. And it's fact. You can put a net in a lake for one night or series of net one night. You know very much about 90% of what's happening in a lake. Simple.
Yeah.
It's really simple, but it has to be complicated because you have to have work. And I remember once, my friend, I was had many friends at the Marine Institute because I was working in the herring surveys or looking for herring in 80 years. And he said to me, "How is it going private? Can you get your bills paid?" Yes. We have far too low salary here. We should have more salary. I said, come with me. Go out in the corridor. Do you see this map? It's map of catch of fish in Iceland from 1930 or something up to today. Look at this. That time when it was catching 500,000 tons of cod, there were 5 people working with it here. Now you are over 100, and the catch is a fraction of what it was. How can you demand higher salary?
Yeah. We all know that. We all know that one. That is the same. That is the same with our councils and local government, right up to central government.
Yeah.
It's the biggest growth area in the world, civil service.
I think that there are more people in the civil service for fisheries in Australia than there are fishermen.
Is that right? Yeah.
Science and policing and everything.
Yeah.
Measuring.
They'll maybe sanction it by saying it's a big island.
Yeah.
John, I would just like to take it conclusion. I'm so pleased with it, and it's been fascinating and interesting because you've come across that you've made it and keeping it simple and easy to understand. You're at one with nature, and as I said already, you speak to fishermen. I don't know any other scientist that has ever done that, and
No.
I'm so appreciate what you've.
Yes,
your
but
time.
The strange thing is that all farmers know this. All farmers. They don't ever buy lambs if they want to increase the stock. unless they have more hay or field, right?
Yeah.
If you go to a farmer and you say, yes, you can increase your production here by not slaughtering so many in the fall. Let them grow bigger. You would get a fist in your face if you said that to them. They know that you can't do this. You have to kill 90% of the stock every year. And pig farmers, they kill youngs. Chicken farmers kills youngs. They never kills the big ones. Because that's where the production is, because the young body is growing much faster than a bigger body in percentage per day. Higher production if they are young when they are killed.
That is one of the fascinating things I've found with you. It looks to me like you have the first thing you would do assessing stocks is rather than count stocks or count fish, or you would look in the stomach.
Yes, you can't count even salmon smolt in a small river. Can't. It's impossible. Or not fish in a lake. No. I've tried.
Thank you, John. Thank you. And can you tell us, our listeners, where can they learn more about what you do and where you do it?
I have a website which is called fisky.com. Fisky.com. You can maybe spell it for them later.
Is that fish?
Feske. Fisky. I'll send it to you.
Yeah, thank you. And we'll put it out there because I'm sure there's going to be many.
There is both Icelandic and an English page. And there you can read everything about the overfishing at Newfoundland, which is still maintained today. It was never overfishing. It was starvation. Right? I even spoke to a captain when I was in Scotland. I was speaking to a captain, England, a captain from Hull that had been on the trawlers, and he followed the fish when it swam away from the field because there was nothing to eat.
I remember talking to an American fisherman in Iceland. It was a world fishing exhibition. We were there, and I was talking to him, and he had been fishing there, and he says they were having to cut out what he called windows in the cod end because otherwise there would be so much fish it would danger taking the boat down.
Yeah, no. Yeah. I have pictures of it in this report about and how the cold pool in the ocean came from Greenland up to West Greenland, down to Labrador, and down. And the fish, first the cod at Greenland collapsed, a year later in the Labrador. And the weight of the fish went down, and the maximum size went down to 3 kilos.
Yeah.
And they were just like sponges, head and tail. It was so thin.
Yeah. I sometimes, obviously, I have a seafood restaurant, and I get fish. I buy fish direct, obviously, and from at certain areas, I've seen us getting fish. You know, as I said earlier, our spawning cycle is anything between February and April when they spawn and they are out of condition. I've seen fish in September and October, and you would almost think it was March and April.
Yeah.
And
but you see in the Baltic Sea now, there is closed for cod fishing because there is no fish, they say, but the fish is maximum size 30 centimeter and thin. And in Greenland, they said the cod was so thin, where we had filleted it, you could read the paper through the fillets.
Yeah, yeah. That's a term we use quite often. Either that or a razor blade fish, because it's so.
Uh-huh. Mhm.
So, and is that just lack of food?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
would there be any other reason for that lack of food?
No, it can't be disease, but fish are prone for disease when they are hungry. Yeah, much more difficult for them to survive. Like humans, if they are under or nourished, you will get sick just from that. You take all diseases and parasites. The way to get rid of parasites in a lake is to go fishing, because parasites are linked to very small items in the food chain where the larvae come in. But if they can eat small food for less time, then they will get rid of the parasites. So parasitism in a fish is a sign of starvation.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah. And when you say parasites, is that like the codworm and things like that?
Cutworms and worms in the intestine are all kinds, in the kidneys, all kinds. Sometimes in trout, it's like macaroni sticks in the intestine, the
Yeah,
guts. So
yeah.
it's all kinds.
That's. I've learned a lot
So,
myself.
so these are the signs that nature is trying to tell you.
Yeah,
Computer doesn't know anything about it.
yeah,
Food is never calculated into equations. You know that fish is nothing worth until it is dead.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Thank you, John. Much appreciated. Thank you
thank you
very
very
much,
much.
John. Thank
Very,
you.
very good
Well,
to participate in this.
and thank you.
Thanks.
So much appreciated. And
Okay,
we'll talk
bye.
again. We'll talk again soon.
Yeah, soon, yes. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye now.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you for listening to Seafood Matters podcast. You can subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. You can join me on Instagram and Facebook by searching for @Seafood Matters podcast. If you have any questions or episode suggestions, please email me at jim@seafoodmatterspodcast.com or get in touch through my website, seafoodmatterspodcast.com.